All right, guys, welcome to the Digital Barbell Podcast. Thanks for taking the time to be here. If this is your first time listening, watching to our podcast, welcome. Hit the like and subscribe button. I guess there's no like button on Apple Podcasts. But anyway, these are on YouTube also. Like we've talked about before, we are working hard to increase our YouTube presence. We put out episodes of 5 minutes with some of our clients on YouTube exclusively. So if you didn't know we have a YouTube channel, it's just youtube.com/digitalbarbell. Go check it out. We have a great interview with EC Synkowski today. We did something we've never done before with her, just a whole episode devoted to under or overrated. We talked about Olympic lifting as part of a general fitness program. We talked about the CrossFit L1. We talked about adding steps for fat loss, all kinds of good stuff.
Yeah.
So stay tuned for this episode. We actually have a lot of exciting podcast episodes coming up. We're going to be interviewing some physical therapists that deal with pelvic floor health. We're going to be interviewing Jason Grubb, 3-time CrossFit Games champion. All kinds of good stuff coming
Who
up.
also lives full-time in an RV.
Yeah.
We're excited. I'm excited to hear about, this will be after the CrossFit Games, so
Yep.
I'm going to go in assuming he's going to win.
4-time. Come on, Jason.
And then also about how he balances training, full training as a CrossFit Games athlete
In an RV park.
RV park. I've watched several of his YouTube videos and he does it and it's fascinating.
And he runs his business out of his
Yeah,
RV.
it's
in
really
this
cool.
tiny little room. You should check out his
It's Jonathan's
YouTube.
dream.
It's wild. Yeah. Do we have a sponsor for this week? We don't have a sponsor for this week, but we do need to let you know and remind you about our arrangement we have with Athletic Brewing, the best non-alcoholic beer in the game.
Yeah.
Our listeners can save 25% off their first order if they order online.
Yeah, just go to digitalbarbell.com/athletic and all the information that you need is there.
Right. You don't have to compromise taste. You don't have to compromise performance to enjoy a nice ice cold brew
Yeah.
at the end of the night. You can still wake up refreshed.
My favorite is the Upside Down. His favorite is the Run Wild IPA. I think they might have like up to almost like 7 to 9 flavors. Or
They are killing
do you
it.
call them flavors? Just beer flavors? It's not flavors. It's brews.
Different brews, yeah.
Brews. Flavors. Like it's a sparkling water or something.
The only other thing that I want to promote is that, well, we are accepting applications for clients if you need a custom training program, you need guidance with your nutrition, but you wrote 12 free travel
Yeah.
workouts that you can take with you anywhere. We have more travel on the horizon. A lot of our clients are traveling. If you're listening to this, you probably have some plans coming up.
And you need absolutely nothing to do these workouts. You don't even need a band. You just need yourself. I wrote these during the height of COVID when people had nothing and they needed something to do in their home. And I've reused these as our clients have gone on vacations. And they are just so great that I wanted to share the love with you guys too. So when you're at digitalbarbell.com, it'll pop up. Just go ahead and download it.
And if it doesn't, it's just digitalbarbell.com/travel workouts.
Or /free, and you can see everything that we have.
Yeah, and
All the
I'll
slashes.
put links to all this stuff in the notes for this episode in case anybody forgets.
Yeah.
We just had guests in town.
Yeah, we had a bunch of my family was in town. There's a little gathering. But I made a post about this the other day, but it was really cool. Like, so my aunt and uncle stayed with us as well. And we love to get together with them and talk with them about their workouts. My uncle is 78 years old. And I forget that he's 78 years old because he seems to age in reverse, which is what we all want. Like, him and my aunt go to the gym 6 times a week. I think they go 5 times a week. On that 6th day, he runs around his neighborhood with his little headlamp on before light. And talking to them about the things that they do, I'm just like, I wish I could like get a video and
Yeah.
share it because to me it inspires me and like I feel like it would inspire others to just be like, why am I making an excuse? Why am I complaining about doing a burpee? Like they were telling me their class was doing burpee broad jumps. I was like, y'all did burpee broad jumps? Yeah, we did burpee broad jumps. Why? And I'm like,
That's awesome.
that's amazing, because sometimes I'll put it out there and people will be like, burpee broad jumps, I don't want to do that. I'm like,
Yeah.
it's like, then they were telling me about this medicine ball workout they did, just like the whole class was a medicine ball.
Yep.
And they did like
Russian
throw them up,
twists and
squats,
wall balls.
put them over your shoulders, Russian twist, like everything you can do with a medicine ball. And I love talking with them about their workout. Another thing he does is he bench presses with the guys one day a week. And I think that's really cool to see. What did he say he's up to? Like,
I know he's benched 135.
So
I don't
cool.
remember how
Yeah.
many reps and sets, but I mean, how many almost 80-year-olds
I
are out
know.
there putting a 45 on each side and getting jiggy?
and that's the thing is like I forget how old he is because of what he still works. He gardens. They run yard of the month all the time. Like super active people. They care about their health. They care about the nutrition, and you can't tell their age. And they
And that's
have
what we
this
want.
freedom of life. They travel. Like it's so cool. I'm inspired by it every
Their
time.
fitness and nutrition enhances their life.
Enhances their life.
And that's what we want for all you guys.
Yeah.
So you keep inspiring us. All right. Well, let's get into this interview with EC. I think you guys are going to like this one. Like I said, if you're new to our podcast, welcome. Make sure you subscribe if you like this kind of content, because we put out 2 podcasts every single week, and we're active on Instagram and Facebook too. All right. So let's get right into the interview. Okay, friends of the podcast will recognize today's guest. EC Synkowski is the inventor of the world famous 800-gram challenge. She's the host of the Consistency Project podcast, which hit over 1 million downloads earlier this year. Welcome back, EC.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me on. Hopefully we'll hit 100 million, but that's Joe Rogan territory. So,
I mean, that's pretty stinking awesome. When I saw that number, I was like, let me go see how many ours has. Oh, 50,000. Okay, moving on. But you and Patrick did a 2-part series after you hit that 1 million downloads, kind of recapping 30 different takeaways. Highly recommend anybody go back and listen to that. So let me put you on the spot here and think about like everything you've learned and talked about in all those episodes, and from coaching people through your master class and all that stuff. Somebody walks up to you and you have to give them a 1 or 2 sentence answer to this question: what should you eat to be healthy? What do you say?
Yeah, the majority of the diet needs to be whole, unprocessed foods. Yeah, I mean, the more and more that you do this, I mean, you guys know this, it's just like nutrition conceptually is unbelievably easy.
Yep. What
we have to do is really simple.
Like your great quote is like, there's nothing new in nutrition.
Yeah.
I love to come back to that.
Yes. I mean, actually, I was just recording another podcast. So people have been asking about specific diets. And so we kind of go over some of these specific diets in mini reviews. And when I was recording it recently with Patrick, one of the things I said was like, I hope the audience knows by now I'm not holding out on any secrets here. We've already said the secret. I think the interest in hearing about these different diets is kind of understanding the claims. So I get the questions. I'm not against the questions, but it's like, guys, I hope you're not expecting that I'm all of a sudden going to have a different hack on episode 150,
Yeah. If anything, all the research does is like reinforce the fact that the basics really are the things that matter.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, totally.
Well, we thought we'd take a different spin with this interview with you today, and we would do kind of an over or underrated, where we talk about some hot topics and we talk about whether there's too much hype, not enough hype, or maybe even just the right amount of hype.
Yeah.
Can we do that? Can we be overrated, underrated, or appropriately rated?
Sure. Appropriately rated is a great response.
Okay, cool. Well, Blakely's going to kind of guide us through these.
All right, here we go. First topic: Olympic lifting as a part of a GPP program.
What do you think about that?
I think it's underrated. I know that there's a lot of people who remove Olympic weightlifting from the protocol because it's too complex and too dangerous, or whatever the perception is. Some of my early personal training clients were actually, I think they were early 70s, and we worked on PVC barbell snatch, and there's just a lot there, and that can be considered Olympic weightlifting. And so I think there's so many great things to learn from it from a coordination point of view, that you don't have to worry about the weights per se, but you still can take benefit from the movement patterns.
Yeah, it's like you go into like any Globo gym and you're not going to find anybody doing any kind of like training for power, I feel like. And I think like the research is pretty clear that, as we get older and people fall and break their hips and stuff, like having a little bit more power would probably prevent a lot of that injury. I think like the line for me is like, do we really need to work on a 10 movement progression of snatch balances and muscle snatches and all that kind of stuff? Or do we just need to get people like moving weight quickly, which is a great part of the Olympic lifts, but I feel like there's a line, like we don't need to turn every soccer mom into like, a competitive weightlifter.
Yeah, when I transitioned from like owning a gym to online, I was hesitant at first for the cleans and the snatches, but as I've worked with people, I definitely, especially the cleans. I mean, people who work with dumbbells especially, they need to get the weight safely to their shoulders in order to either press it or squat it.
Mm-hmm.
So learning how to safely clean a weight is part of that process. So I definitely included.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Sorry, I chimed in on that one.
So no, I
Yeah.
would go ahead.
I was just going to say that, like, I do agree with you that I can totally see the exercise session becomes just like technique. And all of a sudden we have, the person probably just needs to move more. They don't necessarily need to have this perfect overhead position. But I do think that there is great application for it in a general warm up to include for the reasons that I already said. So certainly there is a balance there. I don't think we need to worry about most clients having a body weight snatch or above, but that doesn't mean that moving a PVC through a wide range of motion during periods of the entire workout doesn't have any value either.
Yeah, especially if we do it quickly.
Social media one doesn't allow for that. So
yeah. So I would agree. Underrated
Yeah.
as part of most people's training for sure.
All right. All right, great. Next one, the 80-20 rule as it pertains to nutrition. So this is eating.
This one, there's a lot of nuance in this too, because what does that even mean?
Well, yeah, let's so that
There
means
we
like
go.
we're eating correctly 80% of the time, 20% we're.
Is that what it means? I think that this is this is why I wanted to bring this one
Okay.
up. What are your thoughts on just
Yeah.
kind of the 80-20 rule in general?
Yeah, I mean, I was going to go overrated because exactly what you mentioned. It's like, what are we talking about? Are we talking based on calories? Are we talking about days of the week? Are we talking about meal based? And really the limitation is I just don't think people have a clear understanding of what they're eating. I mean, that's most of what we do in my master class is people are like, oh, I didn't actually realize this was what my diet was.
Yeah.
And so when people are just off the cuff, I eat 80-20, it's like, I don't really think that's grounded in any measurable numbers. I think that's just sort of their feeling of how good their diet is relative to what they what they see in online.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I totally agree that it's overrated, and I would even like go at it more extreme and say it's potentially harmful because it can start to mess with your mind too. Like, I'm doing pretty good 80% of the time. Why am I not getting results? It must be something about me. But like, I'm sure you know this, but the original intent of the 80-20 rule is that 20% of the work that you do is responsible for about 80% of your results, which is true when it comes to nutrition, total amount of food, macronutrient breakdown. That's probably only about where you need to put. That's the 20% you need to put 100% of your effort into, and you'll get 80% of the results. But this somehow it's got mixed up to where, like, if I care about my nutrition, whatever that means, 80% of the time, I should be good. But I mean, I would honestly say, like, when it comes to actual consistency with nutrition, you probably need to be closer to 90% to get the results that most people want to get. And to me, that means you're pretty darn good, if not darn near perfect, 90% of the time. And then that extra 10% can be whatever it wants, and you get the results that you want. So.
Yeah. I mean, even the time I think is a little bit difficult because when you say time, like how many hours are left for the person to go off the reservation?
That's a great point.
Do a good amount. I mean, this is my experience with the zone in the early days of CrossFit, the idea that I wanted to lean out, but yet my cheat days were just so unbelievably epic, that you can undo a lot of your work in a small amount of time. So it's hard. It's like, how are you basing these numbers when in reality we have to know total quantity, and yet they're often basing it off of time. And it's like, okay, these two aren't the same.
Yeah. And like you said in the beginning, like, how are we measuring this? Like, do you have some kind of like ledger that you put a check in a box every single time you make a good decision, whatever that means, and a check in a different box when you make a bad decision? At the end of the month, you tally it up. Like, I was 80% good. I think it's it's tough. I hope I don't use that terminology with clients at all, and I think it's it's messing people up.
Yeah. All right. Awesome. Next one. The CrossFit L1 Certification.
I think it's underrated. I think it's very easy to be to criticize something after you've gone through a learning process. and to now be at this position of higher knowledge and be like, well, I know so much more. And it's like, well, yes, but that has a value for, a certain part of your learning. And I was always shocked, not shocked, but while I was coaching it, a lot of people coming through with a lot of experience, and they still didn't understand the foundational pieces of the CrossFit methodology, because you can very much do CrossFit and have no real knowledge of what it's based on in terms of driving the definition of fitness. And so, yeah, I think it's underrated. I paused a little bit because I also want to make it clear that I don't think that's the only thing you need to be a good coach forever. But I think as an initial seminar to get people on the basics of functional fitness with a measurable endpoint, yeah, it's phenomenal. A lot better than a lot of courses out there.
Do you remember, when did you first take yours?
May 2006.
2006. Okay.
What about you, Blakely?
Yeah.
2009.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
Wow. I haven't taken it. I do want to take it here.
I want him to take it
when it's here in Austin. But just from the outside looking in, it seems way underrated, because I've looked through the curriculum. It's like you learn all this in a 2-day seminar. And like you said, like, it's not necessarily going to make you a good coach, but man, if you go from not knowing anything about fitness and nutrition, you're going to walk out of there with your curiosity piqued, and you're going to know a lot of things. You're probably going to get a lot of your own movement patterns corrected too by some really, really smart people.
So in 2006, were you traveling, like, were you having to travel like to California to do it? And that's the only place they were? Okay. That's really cool.
I forget if it was technically still only California at that part. I don't think it was. I think they were a little bit, because later that year, well, to answer the first question, yes, I went to the original Santa Cruz headquarters. They ended up being 3 days at that time. They were 150 people. They had all the specialty coaches at the same seminar as the level 1. So it was a little bit different. You worked out a lot more than what it is now. But then right after that, the way the old system was, the second level 1 that you went to, because there weren't a lot of CrossFit events at the time, the second one that you went to, you were a trainer for the first time people. And so right after my first one, I was so stoked about everything, and there weren't other CrossFit events, that I did start flying myself around the country to be at these events and be the trainer for people. So yeah, a little bit different.
Wow. So you went to one, and you were automatically kind of like, you can be a trainer if you wanted to be, like
oh yeah.
That's really cool.
The difference now, obviously there's a whole internship process and you have to apply and you have to have credentials, but it's hard for people to understand what the community was like in 2006 because it's so big now. But I mean, Rogue was forming, but it wasn't the Rogue fitness that everybody knows. And there wasn't the CrossFit Games, and there weren't even affiliates in every state, so there wasn't any events to go to hang out with CrossFitters. There wasn't a ton of social media at that time either, such that if you wanted to go do something with CrossFit, you went back to the level 1. Yeah. And so when you went back, you were then like the senior for the newbies. Yeah.
So what made you go take it the first time? Sorry, I'm like excited about this question.
Oh, I know, the CrossFit history, the CrossFit origin stories, right? I had started CrossFit that January. So January 2nd, 2006, I walked into CrossFit Boston because I was just sick of my Globo gym, routine. And, of course I was nervous like everyone else who walks into CrossFit, but I did have a good amount of athletic capacity going in. I already had pull-ups and dips and stuff like that. And so of course I loved it. And, I had been a personal trainer in college. So the head guy was like, I think you should go take your level 1. I said, sure. Coach
cool.
here. Yeah. So I did part-time. Yeah.
Did the level like 2, 3, and 4 exist at that time, or how did that kind of evolve, and how far did you take that?
Well, I'm technically a level 4. So the old, and I was there during a process of this and creating these levels. So I understand the work and level of effort that went into it. But around 2008, they developed something that was the level 2 at that time. And you went back to that seminar and you coached in front of your evaluators, and they gave you a pass or fail. What we learned, and I passed that at the time, what we learned though, there was such a huge gap between the level 1 and level 2. So the level 1, you're a student and you're just absorbing all this information. And our thought was, oh, okay, well now you come to the level 2 and you demonstrate that knowledge. Well, it wasn't that successful. The pass fail rate was very large in favor of the fail rate. And so we learned that we had to put more steps in between before we had people come back and get evaluated. And so that's how the current level 2 got developed. That's where you really come through and get your coached. Then the level 3 is more of a test of your knowledge. And now the level 4 is kind of what the old level 2 used to be. And that is, hey, come coach in front of us and we'll give you a pass fail.
Yeah. I loved the level 2. I always tell people if they need to like re-up their certification, like don't go to your level 1 again, go get your level 2, because it's such a smaller group. And I just, and the coaching.
Where did you get your
I went up to I was at Reebok in Boston to get mine, and it was James Hobart and Austin Malleola. It was really fun.
Yeah.
And then actually when you renewed
it's totally
it,
different.
you renewed it during COVID in our garage on
I
a
know.
laptop.
When I was so excited to have to do it again, honestly. And then it was COVID, and I did it in my garage, and it was cool. It was just like a little, the video one.
A little different.
But it was actually at that time, I was like, they spent so much time developing the online course for that level 2 that I was like, I really like, now where I am in my, coaching career and like doing online coaching, I'm like, I really appreciated having to do this online and get all the knowledge, because it was a great test.
Good.
They're difficult, but
yeah.
they're great.
Yeah.
Good thing you have to be around during that part and work on all that.
They did a good job with
it. Some of the pieces I think are still there, so I think I'm familiar.
Nice.
Oh, cool. All right, we really went down the rabbit hole on that one.
All right, next one. Fiber supplementation and or getting most of your fiber from processed foods. So either supplementing or getting your fiber from processed foods.
Fiber 1 bar.
Yeah. Oh, okay. Yeah, that's overrated. I mean, I think you guys probably knew what I was gonna say. I'm actually working on a podcast right now about fiber. It's this awesome nutrient that we don't think about much, I don't think, but yet the best way to find it is in those whole unprocessed foods, right? We want to fill up on foods for the most part that don't have a lot of calories. For the most part, there are very few people in the world who don't need to worry about calories. They tend to be our professional athletes because they just can't eat enough to keep up with their volume. But for most of us who have kind of the weight control goals, if not weight loss goals, we really need to be getting our fiber from whole unprocessed foods to keep that caloric intake in line.
Yeah. It's like the pendulum, if it hasn't swung completely, it's swinging a little bit too far towards, like, we don't pay enough attention to fiber, but the people who are paying attention to it and don't like have a coach to kind of guide them are probably just looking for these foods that have a bunch of added fiber to them, which is like, it does get the fiber into you, but like you said, it doesn't really accomplish the goal of all the other benefits that come along with naturally foods that are naturally high in fiber. Keeps you full. They're usually pretty hydrating. They help you, well, I think we all know what fiber does when we eat it in food, but like that's a legitimate thing though. Like some of these foods are crazy that have added fiber. It's like,
you wouldn't expect it.
This snack bar has 20 grams of added fiber. You're like, wow, all in 6 bites.
And and if you weren't paying attention, you could really eat a lot of fiber in a day if you were eating a lot of these processed foods that have them added. Some things that you wouldn't expect, like ice cream, and why are they adding into some of the things that they are? Right.
Marketing.
When people go through your masterclass, like how much fiber do you guide people to eat generally?
Yeah, I generally keep them within the kind of the recommendations by the Institute of Medicine, and that's the 14 grams per 1,000 calories. So a lot of times people are, targeting something in this 28 to 35 gram range. But, if we look at some of the data from, non-industrial populations, they have fiber much higher, like 75 grams plus. So I certainly don't worry about if people are going higher, but that's always within the context of the calories. So if we're doing the fiber ice cream and the fiber protein bars, so we get a 70 grams of fiber, but then our calories are also 5,000, we're in no better of a spot.
Right. What are some of the foods in those diets where people can naturally get 70 grams of fiber in? Like, are they eating just like an all bean diet?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely think it's going to be the higher beans, higher veggies, and even grains. Fruits and vegetables, while they typically add fiber to where people are currently, there are a good number of fruits and even some vegetables that don't really have much fiber. And so people can do an 800 gram challenge, and depending on their selections, they could only be getting about 10 grams of fiber. I think most people end up getting about 15 to 20 grams from an 800 gram challenge, but again, it's not foolproof way to get fiber, and generally grains and beans are kind of more of your whole grains, of course, are a little bit more of the fiber heavy ones. Yeah.
Yeah. So it sounds like in general, you think fiber supplementation is overrated.
Mm, totally. Yeah. I mean, you know, me on supplements, it's going to be hard to get me to say yes on any of them.
It's worth a try, though.
What was your
Yeah.
answer?
I would say overrated for sure,
Overrated
for
as
all
well.
those exact same reasons. Probably even the worst offender is probably that gross powder that you mix into water and it kind of turns into a gel that you have to slug down.
Yeah.
Oh,
That's not,
Metamucil?
that's not going to fill you up at all.
Is that
And yeah, I think it's just usually made from psyllium husk, but ugh.
yeah.
I tried it one time for, purposes of research, and
For
the
purposes
rest of
of
that
research.
container went in the garbage.
Oh my goodness. Okay. Aggressive fat loss, defined as more than 1% of weight loss per week.
Over or underrated?
Yeah. Overrated. I think what people don't appreciate about slow weight loss is that you want enough time to live the habits that you need to contain or sustain forever. So when you have this aggressive weight loss, even though it might be like medically safe, you haven't had enough days to put the pieces together so that now those habits are on autopilot. And so while it is possible to lose weight at a faster rate, you haven't made the lifestyle changes to sustain it. So I think that's some of the missed value of this stuff, that it's not like it's so harmful per se. It's not that it's not possible. It's just that we don't really see that people are able to stick to it.
I'd agree with that and say overrated. And another thing that makes this kind of tricky is that even when you take a habit-based sustainable approach to fat loss, you might get what would be considered aggressive fat loss in the beginning stages because of some of the changes that you've made. Like maybe in your first few weeks, you lose 2% per week because maybe you stopped eating something that was making you retain more water, or maybe you just have less food volume in your stomach. So you're like, this is working. And then you're still relying on the habits, but things slow down because of the reasons I just mentioned. And it's like, you were tempted by the fast fat loss in the beginning. But anyway, I just wanted to kind of bring that up, that just because it's okay if you have aggressive fat loss in the beginning, even if you're doing something sustainable, just don't set your expectations for future progress based on that.
Yeah.
Totally.
All right. Adding steps as a tool for fat loss.
Think about this one. This could be a trick question.
Is this like the neutral rated one?
Yeah,
Or
appropriately
like appropriately
rated. You can whip
rated?
that one
Yeah.
out if you need to.
I think I'm going to go appropriately rated. I mean, I think it kind of fits a little bit with the last question in terms of dieting. I really like to recommend strategies that I think people will be able to continue to do. And so it's like, whatever changes that you're making now, do you think you're going to be doing these forever? Because the results that you get with these changes, you're going to have to sustain the results you got. And so sometimes it's like, well, now I'm just going to add 15,000 steps a day. It's like, okay, I mean, that does add up in terms of time. So is this something that you foresee yourself being able to do? So I think obviously movement's great, but I do think that we have to think about, is this something that I'm going to sustain? And I do also find, 10,000 steps was kind of like the initial, benchmark that everyone was using. And now it's like almost become this more is always better. There are diminishing returns at which you'd be better spent, going to lift than necessarily getting to 17,000 steps or something like that, or doing some high intensity cardio or something like that. So I do also see this, a little bit obsession on the neat component of calories burned to the detriment of maybe a better overall fitness approach.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I actually fell into that when we were recently starting a cut, and I upped my steps, and I felt that same way of I had this now I can't dip below this, what will happen if I start to, we were about that 15. It wasn't sustainable. It was taking a lot more time out of our day as the heat intensified. I was like, well, we can't do as many dog walks. So I'm not, and I was like, well, how do I maintain this? Am I just going to spend my work hours on the treadmill? So I can see. Yeah.
I think,
I agree.
I would say we've swung to the point where adding steps for fat loss is overrated. With all the data that we have to track steps, I think it's in danger of creating the same thing that we can fall into with, trying to exercise our way to fat loss. It's looked at as this tag along we can do to exercise, doesn't cause any extra recovery resources to be used. There's all these other mental health benefits. You can take your Andrew Huberman routine and do whatever you want with your steps in the morning. But I feel like we've gone too far with it. And it's like, I still, advise most clients to, get 7,500 to 10,000 steps per day, but not at the expense of like taking that time to cook a piece of chicken or put a little bit more thought into the thing that actually drives fat loss. I also feel like maybe, I've seen this with clients and just like in general that people are like, well, I didn't do my workout, but I did get my steps in. Like, that's good. But like, that's like saying, I didn't get my workout in today, but I did cut the grass and that was pretty hard. It's like I feel like steps is in danger of becoming a mental placeholder for doing your actual training or using that time to put it into nutrition.
Yeah, it is a hard line though. I mean, with so many people that are sedentary,
True.
It's like, great, let's get walking and let's just get some movement. And so I think your points are great. I'm not trying to counter that, but this is why I think I went kind of split the difference and said appropriately rated, because in some contexts it's like, oh my gosh, great, get walking 30 minutes a day. That's going to be huge. And in other contexts, it's like, okay, now you want to change from where you are. More steps isn't probably your next best thing to do.
Yeah, for sure. And that all just starts with like, let's get a baseline of where you're at. Like if you're the person who's already getting 10,000, we need to spend a little bit more time on something else before we go to 15. If you're getting 2,500, well, let's add 1,000 and then add another 1,000.
Yep.
Totally.
All right. Last one. Having specific goals for grams of carbs and fat to eat per day.
Way overrated. I don't need to pause on that one. Jeez.
Is this something that you've changed your mind on over time, or have you always felt the way you have?
I've generally always felt this way. I mean, I don't want to say always, probably since I've done my own thing, I've felt this way. I think we spend inordinate amount of time, and you could even throw protein in there, if I'm being perfectly honest. I think we spend an inordinate amount of time worrying about macronutrient ratios without first understanding the total quantity that we're eating. And so it's like, oh, do the carbs need to be 40 or 45%? It's like, well, how many calories are you eating? It's like, I don't know. It's like, was the carb split irrelevant? Like, what are we worried about? And for a lot of people, they just don't, and myself included, like, I don't like to say these things as though I'm, on some high horse here, but like for a lot of our general fitness goals, assuming you're not doing anything super wacky with your diet, you're going to fall in this middle ground of macronutrient ratios that are fine. Like, unless you're doing some really high volume, high intensity work, we might need to start worrying about your carb intake. But for most of us doing these sub 1 hour efforts, even if they've got, a CrossFit style to them, again, unless you're like carnivore guy, like you're going to be getting enough carbs in your diet to get through it. So I think a lot of this noise about perfect macro splits just shakes out with a moderate, approach to the diet of mostly whole and processed foods. And I get this a lot in my master class, or people that are thinking about coming to my master class. They're like, I've been working with these different coaches and I haven't been able to lose weight, and we're playing with the macro percentages. And I'm like, well, that's not what you need to be playing with.
Right.
And so I think, again, that's just where we spend a lot of our time, unfortunately.
It's like I have a flat
you got
tire.
Me ranting on that one.
Okay.
My car has a flat tire. I changed the oil and it's still flat. I don't understand what's going on here.
Right.
Yeah,
Totally.
I agree. It's way overrated too. I fell into the trap, as a new nutrition coach, jumping right to giving people prescriptions for all three. And actually at the beginning, not even giving them a prescription for fiber. So it's something that I've changed my mind on over time. And it also it feeds into what most people struggle with when it comes to nutrition, is the perfectionist mindset. Like, I didn't hit these numbers. Like, it was a pretty good day, but man, I was 5 grams short on my fat and I went over my carbs by 2. So I think eliminating that eliminates the thing that derails most people with their nutrition. Is all that pressure that we put on ourselves to be perfect. And I think just like, I try to teach clients this, like, what do you think happens in your body when you hit 135 grams of protein versus 130? Do you think like your body knows the difference and you're going to have a different outcome? Like, totally. And I think like social media has really fed into this, and the way that you have to get attention on social media is all this like polarizing kind of stuff, but I don't think it's serving people, and it's way overrated. And if they just follow the advice of smart coaches, they'll be way better off and put less pressure on themselves.
Yeah. It's interesting. I mean, it's always good to remind ourselves of like, okay, how did we get to 2023 as like species in the world and not normally living in such a, comfortable lifestyle as we are now. And it's like, if we really needed these ideal splits of all these macros, we would not be here. Like, the body is not so sensitive that, for most people, the difference between a 20 and a 20% intake on 25% intake on any of the macronutrients, protein included, is really going to matter. It's really going to matter. So anyway, again, that's a ranting one for me. So I'll stop.
The idea for next time we're able to get you on the podcast is to talk about we touched on this one other time we had you on, but how do we fix the, from like a governmental perspective, how do we start to fix the food environment? Because I've been putting more and more thought into this. I know it's something that you care about a lot too. So put that in your hopper as you're ruminating on things for the next few months.
Okay. I was going to say, I hope you have a solution. I don't know that I do. So. I might be asking you that one.
All right. Well, we appreciate your time as always.
Yes.
This was awesome. And before we go, Doug, what do you have coming up that you want our audience to know about? Anything on the horizon?
Nothing too new. Fall masterclass group starts in September. So if people want to dive into that, just find me at optimizedmenutrition.com.
All right. Perfect.
Yeah.
All right. Enjoy the rest of your day. Thanks again.
Yes. Thank you.
Thank you, guys.